Another E3 has come and gone, my friends. As always, I streamed all of the conferences live on my gaming channel, Game Boomers, and there's a link in the description if you'd like to see them for yourself. But all in all, it was a rather lackluster E3. Not too many interesting games, and not too many hilariously cringy moments. Seemed rather soulless, in fact. But there was certainly a lot of social justice influence in games this year. And let's take a peek at that, one company at a time. Electronic Arts.
You act like it's so nonchalant. You're making a Star Wars game. I mean, I think from... go ahead, clap. No, I'm gonna stop you. Keep it going. They're making a Star Wars game.
Please clap.
The only interesting game to come out of EA this year was Jedi Fallen Order. And even then, I'm really stretching at calling it interesting. The combat plays generically, the stealth looks forced, the cutscenes are quite wooden. The entire game, at least the part that EA had to show, was a generic on-rails adventure that alternated between story cinematics and bland action set pieces that only served as a bridge to the next story cinematic. It doesn't even feel like Star Wars, not really. It feels like a generic third-person action game wearing a Star Wars robe. But to talk about Star Wars, we have to talk about Disney. When Episode 7 came out, Disney declared that the entirety of the Star Wars extended canon was struck from the record, both before and after the original movies. So, no Grand Admiral Thrawn, no Knights of the Old Republic, and worst of all, no Shadows of the Empire. In its place, we got the new Disney canon, complete with Han Solo, Marae Sue, whatever the fuck this is, and inexplicably bad writing designed to subvert expectations, but not actually make any narrative sense. Jedi Fallen Order is in the new Disney canon of Star Wars. That's a big problem itself, but SJWs still aren't satisfied with it. Some fans upset Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order protagonist is a white guy. Fallen Order looks fun, but do I really need another white male Jedi? Kinda disappointing that player character is a generic video game white guy. The Jedi Fallen Order trailer is enticing enough. I just have trouble getting excited about playing a broody white dude. Jedi Fallen Order. Here, play as this nondescript white guy and only him. No customization. You're not a vampire princess, dude. In fact, you're all white males. And we need to hear from you less, so how about you just shut up? I wouldn't characterize SJWs as fans. They don't watch the movies, play the games, obsess over the lore, or join the fandom. They just police creators, forcing their political worldview into everything they can, and calling people bigots if they resist. They don't actually care about the communities that they shit up. They're happy to destroy a franchise as long as they're the ones who rule over its demise. That's why nobody went to see Ghostbusters 2016, or why the Boba Fett Star Wars movie was cancelled after Han Solo's box office failure. They're not fans, they're just agitators, and there's no money to be made in bowing to them. In fact, the far superior Star Wars-related announcement this E3 was that Limited Run Games is releasing a compilation of old remastered Star Wars games, including the old Nintendo game, Episode 1 Racer, and yes, thank you God, Shadows of the Empire on the N64. Fuck Disney, man. Microsoft.
The feeling of being there, of walking the streets of the future, is really going to be breathtaking. You're breathtaking. You're all breathtaking.
The Xbox conference was pretty cool. It seems as if the massive failure of the Xbox One has kind of humbled Microsoft a bit. Their next generation console, Project Scarlet, is on paper impressive, though let's see if they can actually pull it off. And then there's the immortal meme that is Keanu Reeves appearing in Cyberpunk 2077. You might remember Cyberpunk 2077 as one of the most anticipated games in years. I know I've got my pre-order ready, but you also might remember it as the topic of a Eurogamer interview from last year, where the gender ideologue masquerading as a legitimate journalist grilled the devs over at CD Projekt Red over trans ideology. If someone wanted to choose a character that was gender fluid, how would you portray that? You know, as an example in the character creation, you can do that by not calling the type of body you choose man or woman, but just title it as body type. And then, from a male or female body type, you can, on this basis, choose how to make your character. Beyond the aesthetics, could you choose to have a different pronoun? Is that an option in the game? I honestly don't know yet. What I can say was that it was a part of Cyberpunk 2020, but how exactly we'll do it in Cyberpunk 2077, I don't know yet. But it is definitely a thing we're aware of. I know plenty of fans who would appreciate that, after all. You have a main character with a name that doesn't specify any gender. Well, exactly. That's why we chose that name, because V works for male, it works for female, and we thought it would be a good option. For gender fluid as well? Yeah. I can only imagine how awkward this sounded IRL. It already oozes cringe in text form. This sounds like the morality police coming around to ensure that you're doing everything according to progressive principles. Like those videos of Sharia watchdogs in ISIS-controlled territories stopping people on the street or going shop to shop, ensuring that everybody's thinking is properly checked and corrected.
A large part of the Hizbah's role is also assuring that the shops and stalls throughout the city are trading fairly. The patrol go door to door inspecting products, practices and pricing.
Like, oh, make sure it's for gender fluid as well. We'll come down on you for your sins if it's not. So when footage of Cyberpunk came out, SJWs flocked to this advertisement in the background, calling it transphobic. It's an ad for a drink with the slogan, "Mix it up," and mentioning 16 different available flavors. It looks like there's a bulge there, which is probably why they're calling it transphobic. The activists getting angry at this ad are missing the point. The artist who created it said that her intent was in fact to reflect the dystopian state of a world in the grip of omnipresent, all-powerful corporations. It's shocking, over-the-top, and exploitative. And yes, that's the point. You guys do realize that Cyberpunk is a hyper-capitalist dystopian setting, right? The kind of thing your socialist brethren screech about non-stop? Do you think such a world would give two flying fucks about your theories of oppression and privilege? But even more basic than that, if there weren't trans people in the game, they'd still complain. And now that there's trans people, visible trans people, you can't get more visible than a dick girl, really. The trans visibility issue is solved, and now they're whining that they're visible. They're exploited now. Well, I've got news for you. In a visual medium, there is 3 ways to represent trans people. 1, make them perfectly passing and never bring it up, in which case they may as well be cis. 2, make them varying levels of passing, which is frankly more realistic, but then you cry about exploitation because the audience can tell they're trans at a glance due to physical features. Or 3, make them perfectly passing, and make their trans status a story point reinforced only by dialogue, which would make the issue shoehorned and massively drop the quality of writing. By the way, the reason most woke media sucks is because they always choose option 3. Oh, and in case you didn't pick up that this was all just self-serving tripe, Anna Valens, one of the people spearheading the charge of drummed-up outrage against this ad, also took the opportunity to advance her own shit game, Blood Pact, an erotic game about 2 trans women and their very visible boners. How exploitative of you, Anna. Trans activists are also mad because if you use futuristic tech to achieve a sex change, you lose a part of your humanity stat. What they fail to realize is that all futuristic body mods come with a humanity drop. It's part of the balance and the theming of the game, that replacing parts of your body with technology comes with ups and downs. Look, I thought Cyberpunk looked cool too, but I really do not want this to be ignored, especially by trans people who may be affected by it. It's an unfortunate fact of reality that, even today, you have to get some kind of basic body mod in order to transition. Just like how you might have to get a joint replaced if you're old or injured. It sucks, but that doesn't change the fact that a post-op trans person has artificially created genitals. That's just how it is. Hey folks, today let's talk about Cyberpunk Japan in the 80s. Have you ever wondered why Cyberpunk as a genre is so steeped with Japanese imagery and references? Well, it's not just flavor text, it's xenophobia. That's right, I'm here to put politics in your video game. Please don't. For fuck's sake, your feminist dance therapy degree does not qualify you to put politics in anything. Asian culture appearing in the cyberpunk genre isn't a representation of the Yellow Menace or something. It's depictions of a post-national globalism and cultural blending that technological advancement, open borders, hyper-capitalism, and the trivialization of travel would create. It's just like the thing with trans people, isn't it? You hide them, it's bigotry. You show them, it's bigotry. Same with Asians for these people, but only when it's politically convenient, of course. The culture of merit that a lot of Asian countries have, and frankly the Jews too, make them the forgotten people of color when it comes to things like reparations or racism. Asians exist when it's a political talking point for social justice, but when their very existence in the West disproves white supremacy, they vanish into thin air. But hey, Cybersloth, you probably shouldn't be using a Tengu mask. You're not Japanese, and that's cultural appropriation. That's digital Jap face. Stay in your lane. You're talking to a transgender transhumanist in Tokyo who has conducted over 100 body modifications on herself, who does programming for a living between organizing for socialist and anarchist groups. Please, corn pone with mayo, tell me how I don't get the cyberpunk genre. I'm embarrassed that you're living in the same country that I'm in. Pray that we don't cross paths because I have a milkshake ready. It doesn't matter how progressive you are. It doesn't matter your rad left credentials. Step out of line even just once, and you're a Nazi worthy of a milkshaking. And finally, let me read you this fucking thread, dudes, because it sums up everything. This looks like the most shitty, bland, and regressive game I've seen in years. Imagine thinking of a cyberpunk future, and all you can come up with is a scruffy white guy with a gun. This box art looks like it would make the kinds of shitty 2014 transphobic jokes CD Projekt Red's marketing department is known for. This box art thinks the age of consent is a form of slavery. This box art thinks you can stop Nazis by proving their ideas are bad. This box art thinks it's important we acknowledge that all lives matter. This box art votes against a woman's right to choose but calls itself apolitical. This box art has a Clockwork Orange poster on its wall. This box art thinks that if fast food workers wanted to make more money, they should have gotten STEM degrees. This box art thinks Tyler Durden was the hero, but that breaking a Starbucks window in protest is not acceptable. This box art thinks it's not prejudice, just gender critical. This box art thinks Elon Musk is rich because he worked hard. I can't fucking believe this dude. This box art thinks you can consent while passed out drunk. This box art thinks it's good that Black Lives Matter demonstrates, but that they'd make more headway if they didn't block traffic. This box art thinks the real problem is unions. This box art is for free speech for everyone except women on YouTube have opinions about video games. This box art imports copies of Japanese swimsuit volleyball games with advanced jiggle physics, but thinks queer people are just too sexual in public. This box art just doesn't understand why people don't like PewDiePie. This box art thinks the reason wages are so low is because employers aren't allowed giving people even lower wages. This box art tells you it isn't racist, but likes to share articles about how black people's skull shapes mean they have a lot. I can't. Holy shit. You know that you can customize your character in Cyberpunk, right? This isn't Jedi Fallen Order. Olivia Hill, were you also mad that it was Shepard and not FemShep on the cover of all the Mass Effect games? These people will never be satisfied. There's even one idiot who's complaining that cis white people are happy about trans representation in Cyberpunk. You know, the same people that activists have been shrieking at to stop being oppressive, to be good allies, to be more accepting, to do something. And now you shit on them for doing exactly that. I could honestly keep going with this for the entire video because there's legions of cry bullies throwing tantrums all around Cyberpunk right now. To the point that white SJWs are now telling the black creator of the Cyberpunk franchise that he doesn't know about oppression and that he's the one doing Cyberpunk incorrectly. But at some point, we've got to move on. Ubisoft.
All the way. What's going on, everybody? Hey, I'm John. Good to be here. This is Bam Bam the dog. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
The new Watch Dogs game takes place in a post-Brexit London where Sadiq Khan's knife ban has utterly failed to bring law and order. The alt-right has come to power and expelled all non-whites from the police force, making white people the only enemies in the game. The proud British characters uprising against the man are almost universally brown punk kids looking to take back their city. And the entire population is willing to be recruited in the fight against the state, and all you have to do is go and ask them. Yeah, this is the most blatantly political game of E3. And I'd highly recommend you go and watch the gameplay trailer because it tells you so much more than I ever could. There's a few things of note though. The UK's anthem only comes on whenever an old white person shows up, like the retired assassin.
And allow me to introduce you to the deadliest of the lot. She's not old, she's experienced.
Is the implication that the only Brits still in London are the old people, and that your average citizen is not British but rather a proud European like Sadiq? Considering how diverse the UK's police force actually is IRL, it's a wonder how exactly they found this many white people to actually play the role of police state pig. I guess Ubisoft doesn't want to show a brown man acting as an oppressor. Look at these background signs, dude. Hashtag secure London, deport illegal aliens, a pathway to citizenship for immigrants if they choose to work for the cops. Even in a fictional universe where SJWs get to craft their perfect vision of what it would be like for their political enemies to take over, service still guarantees citizenship. These ads don't even say things like, we'll deport all non-white people or something. They just say non-citizens. This is how you know these people think that having open borders is a good thing, or that the very concept of citizenship is bigoted. There's actually nothing objectionable in these ads at all. And God only knows the warped lens that Ubisoft's devs view the world through if they think that immigration control is a dystopian concept. Here's what verified hack Patrick Klepek had to say about Watch Dogs Legion. The recruit everyone for the resistance pitch is undercut by the notion that plenty of people would enjoy and benefit from an authoritarian regime, and have no interest in fighting back. Hopeful the game addresses that in some way. Well, the implication, since you didn't pick it up, Patrick, is that the powers that be in London are behaving so badly that the entire population, regardless of their differences, is willing to rise up against the state. You think that this would be a lefty's wet dream, because this game obviously depicts a post-Brexit society, even as Ubisoft tries to publicly spin that the game is apolitical. But Klepek's complaints about realism actually undermine his own position, although he's too dense to put it together. Yes, plenty of people benefit from an authoritarian regime, or more likely, are just apolitical, or prefer the tyranny of stability to the chaos of upheaval. and therefore would not want to participate in the revolution. That's why Antifa views everyone not them as the fash, or communists view the uninvolved as counter-revolutionary elements. You can't be neutral on a moving train and all. But it's also a possibility that the world Ubisoft has crafted is nothing like reality. The UK surveillance state is not a right-wing creation, but rather something that all parts of the political spectrum has contributed to, the radical left with an especially noteworthy glee about it. It's actually more likely that the future depicted in Watch Dogs Legion is a future where the Remainers won out against the Brexiteers, due to the massive social fracturing caused by the non-integration of anti-British cultures into London, necessitating a heavy police presence to maintain law and order. Slapping a few alt-right slogans around the place and posing like teenage rebels doesn't change the fact that, insofar as Brexit is concerned, this is something that the left are more likely to do than the right. Bethesda.
We have had an incredibly exciting year at Bethesda Game Studios. Given some of that excitement, impressed you're still here.
Okay, Bethesda waifu is adorable. We all know it. She came out on stage, excited and nervous, and announced her game in as cute a way as she could.
Wow, so many people. Wow, thank you. ありがとうございます。It's spooky. It is normal or paranormal? I ask myself this question every time I go to the office. Just kidding. Just kidding, just kidding. We are very excited. Let's take a look. 見てね. Thank you. Bye-bye.
She became an instant meme, and everyone began drawing fan art of her and her onstage antics. And she loved it. She even tweeted montages with heartfelt thanks to all of her fans. SJWs were mad because they are mad as a matter of course. Stop fetishizing Asian women because they're cute. This is racism. I mean, forget about the fact that Ikumi Nakamura designed Bayonetta, a woman with impossibly long legs whose clothes disintegrate as she pulls off increasingly more complex combos. A character that has been an SJW bane for years. Oh no. Now they're on her side. I noticed the blue check marks reposting this older article. Stop calling Asian women adorable. When I'm at work, I want to talk about work. Cute. Adorable. I wish I could adopt you. Pixie. These are the things said by feminists, writers, and people who take time out of their weekends to attend a literary festival. A lot of progressive people. And would-be well-meaning people, many of whom, I imagine, would be dismayed to learn anything they've done could be thought racist. But that's what it is. However well-intentioned, it's racism. Fine with me, Miss Kwan. You're ugly, annoying, and I don't want you to be anywhere near me. Is that better? Good God, imagine living like this. Imagine turning literally everything into a race issue. Eventually people are going to get bored of you and tell you to fuck off because you got nothing insightful to say about anything without wrapping it back around to the color of your skin, which is quite white, by the way. Enjoy your privilege. In the end, the work that Ikumi Nakamura has done is incredible stuff. She's actually the empowered, talented working woman that feminists want to see. She's actually the game developer that Western SJWs wish they were. And that's why they hate her. Of course, for me personally, Bethesda's conference contained one other noteworthy bit. A new Commander Keen game. Commander Keen was an old PC platformer series released on floppy disks. That's the save icon for you Zoomers. And I grew up loving those games. However, the new one is a mobile game, and it's nothing like the original, not even the same genre. Yep, just like Command & Conquer last year, another beloved franchise is being flushed down the fucking drain.
Oh shit, Commander really?
No, shut up, I heard mobile.
Oh, mobile, no!
Oh, Dev. Are you regretting having a really old phone now?
No. I'm regretting the reviving Commander Keen as a mobile game.
It broke my heart, guys. But this leads me into my next topic. Fuck you, gamers. Video games have been getting quite bad for a while now. The blatant mistreatment of old franchises like Commander Keen or Command & Conquer is just one spoke on that wheel. Sure, there's the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which looks phenomenal, but for every FF7 there's a poorly optimized Chrono Trigger Steam port. For every Trials of Mana, there's a barely functional Secret of Mana remake. Big-name game companies seem to be floundering, with the exception of maybe Nintendo. On the flip side of the coin, indie games are in a renaissance right now, sure, but a lot of those are made by SJWs and have their shit politics shoehorned in. It's the rare indie game that is both high quality and doesn't try to convert you to fucking communism or something just for turning it on. Along with the misuse of old beloved franchises and the cancer that is the indie scene, games are also becoming hyper-corporatized. And this is due to SJW involvement even as they rant about being anti-capitalist. For example, the Epic Games Store is buying up every game in sight, even if it's very clearly at the expense of the company's workers, like with Borderlands 3, or if it breaks the terms of service of Kickstarter, like with Shenmue 3. It's easy to pin that on capitalism and think you know what's going on, but man, it's just not that simple. Unionization of tech is worth its own video, so I won't dive too deep into it here, but consider this. A lot of these game companies are in the same vein as the Silicon Valley tech giants. They're run by hyper-lefties. They've got progressive-leaning HR departments, and they use social justice logic. Remember, for example, when Kickstarter employees wanted to unionize, and Kickstarter's higher-ups said, unions are intended to protect the vulnerable members of society, and we feel the demographics of this union undermines this important function. We're concerned with the misappropriation of unions for use by privileged workers. And what was the progressive reply to having their own rhetoric spewed back at them by a company? Good lord, your union is problematic and should check its privilege. Shit like this is a key danger of letting mega corporations pretend to be progressive. No, you idiot, this is exactly the future you wanted. Here's the Kickstarter staff page. Of those employees who opted to provide pictures, they're almost all white, with a sizable minority being Asian, and only a few of other races. There's also a lot of men here too. Kickstarter is right in saying that its workers are privileged and are misappropriating unions meant for the oppressed, because they're all fucking white males.
You're fucking a white male!
Your ideology gave them the tools to do this. This is exactly how a social justice-oriented company would act in this situation. I know Kickstarter is not a strictly games company, even though it funds a lot of games, but my point is, it's not an exclusive function of capitalism for power or capital or talent or whatever to pool in the hands of the few. That seems to be a kind of fundamental law of nature at this point. And it's not exclusively the domain of right-wing politics to create corporations that have shit business practices. Epic Games, the company buying up exclusives left and right, is funded by Tencent, a Chinese state-run company. But pointing this out on Twitter is considered both racist and counter-revolutionary by this crowd. The same crowd that screams for Japanese anime games to be censored for their problematic sexual content if they ever come out over here. It's sort of like how Google refuses to work with the American government but will happily work with the Chinese one. It's a level of backwards insanity that I don't think we've ever seen before, justified by a mixture of socialist sympathy, white guilt, and a desire to rebel against the power structure while not really caring about the consequences. This rant isn't much about video games anymore, because the ramping up of this type of exploitation in games is only a small part of a larger issue. Epic Store's shit business practices is only one part of it. Same with the trend toward virtual rentals and away from physical ownership, like the Google Stadia, or Xbox's monthly Netflix-style service for games. They want to control what you do with the things you buy after you buy them. I went into this in depth in my piracy video. And don't get me started on data collection, this is just a complete nightmare waiting to happen. How long until some idiot mouth-breather collaborator journalist tells me it's immoral to play my old Super Nintendo because all my old games have been ported to modern platforms, so I should just shut up and pay again to play the games I already own, except this time I won't own them because it'll be entirely online. And my online copy of the game can be taken away for any reason, ranging from punishing me for my off-platform speech, to deleting games from the service due to a high-profile scandal surrounding the title, to the service simply shutting down due to age or lack of use. And in participating, all of my data will be collected and sent overseas, and all the money I spend on the service will go into the pockets of people directly working against my own interest. And if I just refuse them and turn on my SNES in protest, then I'm a bigot that needs to be punched or milkshaked or something. Video games suck right now. And I don't even care about representation, like lesbians in The Last of Us or whatever. Who cares? Tell the stories you want to tell. As long as you're not being coerced, I'm fine with whatever. But video games suck right now because today's companies don't have any respect for the properties they manage. Finding a quality, non-regressive, non-censored game is like finding a needle in a haystack. And despite what progressives say about it, social justice ideology is completely compatible with hyper-corporatism, and is the current justification for the game industry's unending greed. The silver lining is that some developers still have a spine, like when the official Cyberpunk Twitter account made an assume your gender joke, or when Wolfenstein's social media compared game journos to the Reich and Nazi propaganda, or like when the former president of Nintendo of America, the originator himself, said that his company is about making quality games, and that political statements are for others to make.
Making political statements are for other people to do. We want people to smile and have fun when they play our games.
Or like when EA donated millions to charity and Anita threw a public fit because her charity didn't receive any money. To me, E3 has always been a blast. I love streaming it, I love seeing the new games, I love the memes and the culture. But politically, E3 was a garbage fire, and has been for a while now, just like gaming as a whole. Watch who you buy from. Don't support these shitty people who think they can pull a fast one on you. And don't be afraid to pirate liberally if the situation calls for it. And I'm still pissed about Tifa's titties. Alright my friends, that about does it for me today. The new artwork for the video, me flying around a strange void on my chair, was drawn by Panty Gremlin. They're actually facing some financial difficulties right now, so I'm going to put a link to their GoFundMe in the description of this video, because I do want to support those who support my channel. Thank you very much. I love you.